Welcome back now for the news in detail. We start from Afghanistan, where a series of explosions has killed 24 people in the capital Kabul and Nangarhar province. 27 others have been wounded in the blasts. Officials said the attacks began with the bombing of a bus carrying civil servants in Kabul. Interior Ministry spokesman Nusrat Rahimi said the second explosion occurred near the site of the bus attack. The third blast hit eastern part of the capital. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid claimed responsibility for the Kabul attacks, saying they killed 9 foreign soldiers. The attacks came during a visit to Afghanistan by U.S. Joint Chief of Staff head General Joseph Dunford. In another bomb attack, 9 people, including 6 women and 4 children, were killed in the eastern province of Nangarhar. Now, Sudan's military council has arrested the army chief Hashim Abdel Muttalib for involvement in a failed coup earlier this month. The ruling council said at least 16 active and retired military officers have been detained for investigation and trial. In a press conference, Council Chairman Mohammed Othman said officers from the intelligence security services have also been arrested. He said plotters of the failed July 11th coup attempt sought to scuttle a political settlement leading to civilian rule. The constitutional power-sharing deal signed recently by the military and civilian opposition is yet to be announced. Now, to talk on this, we have with us our correspondent from South Sudan, Patrick Oyer. Patrick, the situation seems to be confusing. The failed coup attempt shows the military is divided over the power-sharing agreement. And can this arrest of the military chief trigger a backlash from within the armed forces?
I don't think so. I don't think that the arrest of some of the military officers will trigger a backlash. You know, the problem now is the public is not even aware of what is going on. The public is only depending on information coming from the military saying this group of people were involved in a coup attempt and so on. And it is even possible that some of these are individual kind of conflicts or conflicts within the armed forces among some generals, and that now the public is kept actually unaware of the realities which is on the ground. But it is possible that whenever you disagree with a group of people within the military now, then it is easier for you to be, you know, named a coup plotter. I mean, and that is dangerous because, for example, the people of the Sudan and the military know very well that people are very happy now that there's agreement being worked on, and of course the fall of Omar al-Bashir, people are hoping for a new government. So whoever is termed as being you know, a sympathizer of the former President Omar al-Bashir, or somebody who wanted to overthrow the government or to be looked at as a radical person, definitely the public are going to, you know, be against that person. So it is possible that some individuals or some personalities in the military are using the coup issues to silence some of their opponents. This is also possible. But the people of Sudan are a little bit confused and worried now. What is happening? Time and again you hear of coup plot, people are arrested, and there's also no proper information coming out, like, okay, if there was a coup plot, if these people were arrested, what next? What has happened? Have they been taken to a military court-martial, or what exactly is happening? The public is kept kind of unaware of what happens after all this.
Yeah, right. The situation is pretty confusing. So, Patrick, we've seen after agreeing on a joint sovereign council that is going to rule Sudan for the next 3 years until the elections are organized. But what is holding back the constitutional declaration of the agreement signed by the military and the civilian council?
Yeah, for now it is very difficult to tell exactly where the disagreement is. But we understand that there are issues concerning, for example, accountability for the atrocities that were committed, the civilians that were killed when actually they were still protesting that they wanted military to hand over power to the civilian. And we understand that the military do not want this issue to be brought up again. They are saying, let bygone be bygone. Let that issue not be investigated, for example, and those who maybe would be held culpable be brought to book. They are saying that happened during the revolution and that it should be left as it is. But the representatives of the protesters are insisting that this should be looked into. So those are some of the things that are bringing disagreement over the issue of the constitutional declaration. But also from experience, we know that it is going to be extremely difficult, for example, to prosecute those who would be in government. If, for example, those who would be in the transitional government are found to be culpable and that they need to stand trial, then it would be extremely difficult because there is going to be the issue of national interest. They are going to argue that, for example, if you bring a minister or a vice president to stand trial, then you are going to draw international attention to this issue, and therefore will not get the support which we need to, move this country forward economically and so on. So it is something very, very difficult, even if it is put in the constitutional declaration that investigation would be done and those found culpable would be held accountable. It is something that may end just in a piece of paper.
Right, Patrick, the situation is already confusing and it is getting much difficult with time because reports are coming in that the opposition are drafting a new agreement once again. So does this mean that the opposition is planning to back out of the deal brokered by the African Union?
They will try. They will try to pull out. But also, this is a nature of negotiations. People always change their minds, especially when you don't sign something immediately when an agreement has been reached. That's why it's important to initial whatever document contains something that you have agreed on, so that people don't change their mind, because they go and consult their constituencies, they go and consult members of international community who may have their own interest in your case, and then they come and say, no, what we were discussing yesterday and we agreed tentatively or in principle is not working now, so we want to make a new agreement. And if you are not careful and if the mediators are not firm, then what is going to happen is that there will be no agreement. You will be moving in circles. You agree on this today, tomorrow one party has changed its mind, and then you go to another issue, you agree, you come back, and it will just be a circle, and time will be wasted. People will lose their businesses, people will lose their lives, and because the chaos, the more there is no proper system, the more there is no clear future, then you are bound to have this kind of you hear of military coup, you hear of chaos once in a while here and there, and the business people, the people who are there who don't even care about who is in government, but they want to see their children go to school, they want to see hospitals functioning, they will be the very people who will be suffering. So for the mediators, for the African Union and for the Ethiopia who are leading this mediation, they have to stand firm such that when there is any agreement reached, those who want to pull out should be made to stick to the agreement. Then the whole process will speed up and peace will eventually come to the Sudan.
Right, Patrick Oita, correspondent South Sudan. We do hope that the difficulties and the suffering of the people of Sudan ends and they find peace. Now, moving on, in Syria, 18 civilians have been killed in regime and Russian airstrikes in the northwestern province of Idlib. War monitors say 5 children were among those killed. Turkey and Syria's disagreement over the Idlib safe zone has led to an escalation in clashes. More than 500 civilians have been killed since late April. Meanwhile, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu says Ankara is running out of patience on establishing a safe zone in northern Syria. Speaking to reporters in the city, Cavusoglu said the US and Turkey failed to agree on the size of the safe zone. This week, the two countries held 3-day talks in Ankara on the zone and other issues, including progress on the Manbij roadmap. The Kurdish authorities in Syria have repeatedly appealed to the international community for support in managing refugee camps. The conditions of these camps remain harsh and in violation of international standards of basic hygiene. More in this report.
Foreign women and children are housed in a separate annex in Syria. Most of the camp inhabitants have little hope of returning home, as Western countries have been largely reluctant to take them back. The rights groups warned many children in the camp are dying from the acute diarrhea and flu-like infections. People started fleeing Baghuz late last year. The UN says at least 240 children have died en route or shortly after arriving at the camp. In April, the Kurds said they had to deal with Baghdad to repatriate 31,000 Iraqis, but no transfers have yet happened.
Now it is between life and death. We are waiting for treatment. They do not care about the children at all. We want them to do checks and x-rays.
A camp resident complained of slow healthcare and water. The UN Humanitarian Coordination Office, OCHA, has also reported a slight increase in acute malnutrition this month.
At first, she suffered from the heat. She did not complain about anything. All her limbs were shaking and she started to get a temperature. And there was no treatment against the fever here. She felt sick and unconscious, and foam started coming out of her mouth like she was dead. I went to the city of Hasaka 17 times and once for 10 days.
Kurdish-led forces expelled the last ISIS fighters from the riverside hamlet in March after streams of people poured out of the embattled area.
Now in Somalia, 7 people have been killed in a bombing at a mayor's office in the capital city of Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab militants have claimed responsibility for the attack. 5 others, including the district commissioner and mayor of Mogadishu, were wounded in the attack. Al-Shabaab militants said their target was the United Nations Special Envoy, who had left the building before the explosion. A security official said a suicide bomber entered a meeting hall and detonated the bomb. Al-Shabaab has fought for over a decade to topple the Somali government. Sweden is holding talks with Britain and Iran over a UK-flagged tanker which was seized by Tehran last week. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has hinted the Swedish-owned vessel could be released in return for a supertanker held by the United Kingdom. Sweden's foreign ministry says it is concerned over the escalation in the Strait of Hormuz. The ministry says it is vital for Sweden and the EU to protect freedom of navigation in the Gulf. Moving on, Iraqi forces have arrested 12 ISIS suspects in a counter-terrorism operation in north of the capital, Baghdad. An army spokesman said Iraqi helicopters and US aircraft supported troops as they combed approximately 100 villages. Soldiers found 4 ISIS hideouts and seized 28 bombs and 4 Katyusha rockets. This is the second phase of an anti-ISIS campaign recently launched by Iraq. The first phase targeted the western provinces of Anbar, Salahuddin and Nineveh. The Saudi-led coalition says it has intercepted a Houthi drone in Yemen. Spokesperson Turki Al-Maliki says the armed UAV targeted a residential area in Abha city. The spokesperson said the kingdom will take tough measures to paralyze the militia's hostile capabilities. Houthi rebels claim the attack hit a Saudi airbase in the border city of Khamis Mushaid near Abha. This is the second Houthi drone attack on Abha in the last week. The first one came days after the Saudi-led coalition launched a military operation against rebel positions in the capital, Sana'a. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, Pakistan says Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to the United States has reset ties between the two countries. The Foreign Office said Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Donald Trump have agreed to work together for regional peace and stability. Spokesperson Mohammad Faisal said Indian spy Kulbhushan Yadav has been informed about a recent International Court of Justice decision. It said arrangements are being made to grant consular access to Yadav. Faisal said Indian forces have violated the ceasefire along the line of control and working boundary over the past week. US President Donald Trump has vetoed 3 congressional resolutions seeking to block arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. President Trump said the resolutions undermine US ties with its Gulf allies and hamper its ability to maintain security cooperation. He said barring the sale of US weapons to Riyadh and Abu Dhabi could also prolong the conflict in Yemen. This comes after both chambers of Congress voted to block the sales. Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the Senate will hold a vote within days on whether to override Trump's veto. The Senate requires a 2/3 majority to beat the veto. In another development, former Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller says he did not exonerate President Donald Trump in his probe into Russian meddling in U.S. elections. Mueller has appeared at the congressional hearing to give testimony. Mueller says President Trump wanted to fire him because of his investigation. The House Judiciary Committee chairman said no one is above the law, but Republicans try to paint the Mueller investigation as unfair to President Trump. Mueller also said it is unconstitutional to indict a sitting president. Robert Mueller's probe report was released in April. The probe found insufficient evidence to establish that President Trump and his campaign were engaged in a conspiracy with Russia. Meanwhile, Seoul says North Korea has fired 2 short-range missiles into the Sea of Japan. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the projectiles were launched from the eastern city of Wonsan. South Korea's Defense Ministry spokesperson Choi Hyun-soo said Pyongyang must stop acts that raise tensions in the region. Tokyo has confirmed the launch but said the missiles did not reach Japanese waters. Japanese Cabinet Secretary General Yoshihide Suga said the missiles launches did not pose any immediate threat to national security. This comes after North Korea issued threats over planned military exercises between South Korea and the United States next month. Britain's new Prime Minister Boris Johnson has carried out the biggest cabinet cull in almost 60 years. Riding the cabinet of rivals, Johnson has appointed loyalists to deliver Britain's exit from the EU on October 31st. Priti Patel has been appointed as Home Secretary, while Sajid Javid is the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Former Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab has been made Foreign Secretary. Raab replaces Jeremy Hunt Johnson's main rival to become leader of the ruling Conservative Party. Johnson has appointed his brother Joe as Minister of State at the Department for Business. But the UK public remains divided over Brexit, and thousands marched against Johnson's appointment on the streets of London. Now, Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rossello has announced his resignation after days of mass protest in the Caribbean island. In a televised speech, Rossello said he will leave office on August 2nd. The 40-year-old governor is leader of the New Progressive Party, which advocates the United States statehood. Rossello has been at the center of criticism over his leaked sexist and homophobic comments. His texts mocked victims of Hurricane Maria, which devastated the island in 2017, causing thousands of deaths. Rossello will be replaced by Puerto Rico's Secretary for Justice, Wanda Vasquez. Now, devastating floods in India have killed 17 endangered one-horned rhinos, along with over 200 other wild animals. Officials say half of Assam's Kaziranga National Park has drowned following 10 days of torrential rains. A park official said 205 dead animals also include 112 hog deer and an elephant. It says 12 sambar deer, 7 swamp deer and 2 buffaloes died. 69 stranded animals, including 3 rhinos and an elephant, were rescued. The devastating monsoon has killed over 200 people in India and over 150 across South Asia. Meanwhile, Indonesia is facing the challenge of disposing of its rubbish amid a growth in plastic waste. The country is second only to China in terms of dumping plastic into the ocean. More in this report.
From shopping in the markets to buying food from a roadside stall, millions of Indonesians rely on plastic bags. On average, a family uses over 25 plastic bags, 2 plastic bottles and 2 plastic containers every day. The plastic bags are then dumped in heaps of plastic debris, snack wrappers and other trash that covers the streets. Some of the refuse also ends up clogging drains, resulting in overflowing sewers.
I get a plastic bag every time I buy chicken, when I buy vegetables, fermented beans, tofu. I get plastic when I buy chili. I get plastic. All the sauce is packaged in plastic too.
Admitting it is difficult to go totally plastic-free, many have pledged to quit using plastic accessories.
In future, when I go to the market, I'll bring a basket to put everything I buy in there, so I can cut down on the usage of plastic bags.
Many countries are banning the use of plastic bags after a UN resolution calling for reduction in plastics usage by 2030.
Now, Asia-Pacific markets have risen cautiously after a tech-fueled rally on Wall Street. Japan's Nikkei 225 is close to a 3-month high. Mainland Chinese indices and Hong Kong's Hang Seng have also risen. Australia's ASX 200 is in positive territory, but South Korea's Kospi has declined over rising trade tensions with Japan. In Europe, the FTSE 100 continues to trade higher. Investors are awaiting European and US central banks' decisions on lowering interest rates. Now, 3 Pakistani climbers have summited the world's second highest peak, the K2, after a 2-month struggle. Sajid Satpara, son of veteran Pakistani climber Ali Satpara, was among those who ascended the mountain. The Karakoram Club said 19 summits were done today in the early morning. It said the climbers are now descending to lower camps. Earlier this week, 4 Pakistani climbers surmounted the peak in a first this summer. Muhammad Ali Satpara, Imtiaz Satpara, Fida Ali and Ali Musa ascended the peak on July 22nd. Now let's have a look at the weather update around the world. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, stay tuned with Indus News.